The wind across the Altiplano does not just carry dust. It carries the microscopic fragments of a world that was finished long before our own began. Here, where the air is thin enough to make the lungs ache and the sky turns a bruised, deep indigo, the ground is littered with the impossible. Imagine a slab of red sandstone, weighing as much as a modern cargo ship, moved across miles of broken terrain and then sliced with the ease of a hot wire through wax. There are no chisel marks here. There are no signs of the frantic, uneven chipping of a primitive hand. Instead, there is only the terrifyingly smooth surface of a machine-cut edge, a surface so flat that a single hair from a human head cannot find a gap when pressed against another block. We walk across these ruins and we tell ourselves they are the work of people who had just discovered the wheel. Yet the stones themselves whisper a different story. They speak of a precision that mocks our history books. They speak of a logic that does not belong to the age of copper and bronze. To touch these stones is to feel a cold, vibrating silence that has lasted for 12,000 years. It is a weight that sits in the pit of the stomach, the realization that we are not the first masters of this planet, but perhaps only the most recent tenants in a house that has been built, destroyed, and rebuilt more times than we dare to count. The Earth is a restless machine of forgetting. We live on a crust that is constantly being dragged down into the furnace of the mantle, melted into liquid fire, and birthed again as new mountains. We look at the great peaks of the world and see them as eternal, but they are merely the foam on a slow-moving wave of stone. The mountains we climb today are made of the seafloors of 1 billion years ago. This process, this relentless churning of the world's skin, ensures that almost nothing of the deep past survives. If a civilization existed 100,000 years ago, the ice would have ground its cities into white flour. The rain would have dissolved its steel into rust and washed it into the lightless trenches of the Pacific. The very ground it stood upon would have been folded into the depths of the planet, leaving no trace but a slight chemical anomaly in a layer of clay. We are searching for ghosts in a house that has been burned down and rebuilt every summer. This is the scale of deep time. It is a scale that dwarfs our empires and makes our greatest monuments look like sandcastles built too close to a rising tide. To understand what we have lost, we must first look at the stone itself. In the high places of the world, from the peaks of the Andes to the sun-scorched plateaus of Egypt, there exists a type of masonry that defies every rule of the primitive era. Consider the blocks of gray andesite, a stone so hard it can only be effectively cut today with diamond-tipped saws or high-powered lasers. In these ancient sites, we find holes drilled into the stone with a consistency that suggests a high-speed mechanical process. The grooves of the drill are uniform, spiraling down into the rock with a feed rate that exceeds what we can achieve with modern handheld equipment. When you run your finger along these grooves, you are touching the signature of a tool that should not have existed for another 10 millennia. There is a paradox here that the mind struggles to hold. We are told these people were farmers who used diorite balls to pound away at the rock until it took shape. But if you spend a day in the heat, swinging a heavy stone against a wall of andesite, you quickly realize the futility of the narrative. You do not get a glass-smooth finish by pounding. You do not get internal right angles that are perfectly sharp to the touch by rubbing one rock against another. You get those things through the application of immense power and a deep understanding of the molecular structure of the material. The skepticism of the modern age is a comfort. It protects us from the vertigo of realizing how little we know. The official record suggests that these anomalies are simply the result of infinite time and infinite labor, that if you have enough workers and enough centuries, you can achieve anything. This is a powerful argument, but it fails when it meets the physical reality of the sites. Time and labor can move a mountain, but they cannot create a precision-fit joint where the gap is measured in microns. Labor can build a pyramid, but it cannot explain why that pyramid is aligned to the cardinal points of the compass with an accuracy that was not matched until the invention of the satellite. We are asked to believe that a culture without the telescope, without the compass, and without the mathematical language of trigonometry, somehow mapped the movements of the stars over thousands of years with a precision that accounts for the slow wobble of the Earth's axis. This wobble, known as the precession of the equinoxes, takes 26,000 years to complete a single cycle. To even notice it is happening requires a civilization to keep records for centuries. To measure it accurately requires a level of observational science that we only recently reclaimed. We see the rebuttals to this in the very soil beneath our feet. In the Amazon basin, beneath the canopy of what was once thought to be a pristine, untouched wilderness, LiDAR technology has recently revealed the outlines of vast, interconnected cities. These were not small villages of hunter-gatherers. These were sprawling urban centers with complex water management systems, raised highways, and geometric earthworks that span hundreds of miles. The scale of the earth moving required to build these structures is staggering. Millions of tons of soil were shifted to create a landscape that was entirely artificial, designed to support a population in the millions. Yet, when the first Europeans arrived, they found only jungle and small tribes. The civilization that built those highways had already been erased by the green wall of the forest. The earth did not just reclaim the land, it digested the evidence. The organic materials, the wood, the fabric, the records, rotted away in the damp heat, leaving only the shape of the ground itself to tell the story. This is the fate of all our works. If we disappeared tomorrow, the concrete would crumble, the steel would snap, and within a few thousand years, a satellite looking down would see nothing but a strange rectangular pattern in the hills. The mystery deepens when we look at the commonality of the design. Across the globe, separated by oceans that were supposedly impassable, we find the same architectural DNA. We see the same massive, interlocking stones with their strange, nipple-like protrusions left on the surface. We see the same orientation to the rising sun on the solstices. We see the same mathematical constants, numbers like pi and the golden ratio, embedded in the dimensions of monuments that were built thousands of miles apart. If these cultures were isolated, as we are told, then we are looking at a coincidence that borders on the impossible. It is more likely that we are looking at the scattered survivors of a single global tradition. A tradition that understood the world as a geometric whole. These builders were not concerned with the trivialities of their own era. They were writing in stone for the benefit of a future they knew would eventually forget them. They were leaving a message in a language that would survive the grinding of the glaciers and the rising of the seas. The air in the deep chambers of these monuments is different. It is heavy, charged with a stillness that feels intentional. When you stand inside a structure made of 20-ton granite beams, you are standing inside an acoustic resonator. In many of these sites, the stones are tuned to specific frequencies. If you hum a certain note, the entire room begins to vibrate, the sound bouncing off the hard, polished surfaces until it feels as though the stone itself is singing. This is not the accidental byproduct of primitive construction. It is anomalous engineering. It suggests that the builders understood the relationship between sound, vibration, and matter in a way that we are only beginning to explore. They were not just building tombs or temples, they were building machines. Machines that may have been designed to affect the human consciousness or to tap into the natural resonance of the earth itself. We look at these stones and see a wall. They may have looked at these stones and seen a battery, a conductor, or a lens. The tragedy of our current understanding is our insistence that progress is a straight line. We imagine history as a ladder, with us at the very top, looking down at the rungs below. But the geological record suggests that history is a circle or perhaps a spiral. We climb for a while, we reach a height of sophistication, and then the earth breathes. The axis shifts, the ice melts, the fire falls from the sky, and the ladder is kicked away. We are left to start again in the mud, with nothing but half-remembered stories of a time when we could move mountains and speak to the stars. These stories become myths. The engineers become gods. The machines become magical artifacts. But the stones remain. They are the only things that survive the reset. They are the silent witnesses to a level of mastery that we are currently struggling to regain. Consider the weight of the water. 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last great ice age, the world changed in a heartbeat. The vast sheets of ice that covered the northern hemisphere, miles thick and heavy enough to depress the Earth's crust, began to melt with a terrifying speed. This was not a slow, gradual warming. This was a cataclysm. The sea level rose by hundreds of feet, flooding the coastal plains where the majority of human populations have always lived. Imagine the roar of the water as it rushed into the Mediterranean, or the sound of the land snapping back upward as the weight of the ice was removed. This is the event that is etched into the collective memory of every culture on Earth as the Great Flood. It was the moment the first civilizations were wiped clean from the map. Their port cities, their coastal highways, their great libraries, all of it was swallowed by the dark, churning depths. What we see today, the ruins in the high mountains and the deserts, are the inland outposts. They are the remnants of a world that was already ancient when the water came. The stone does not lie. When you look at the erosion patterns on the most famous monuments of the Giza Plateau, you see something that the desert sand could never produce. You see the deep, vertical fissures caused by thousands of years of heavy, cascading rainfall. The problem is that it has not rained like that in Egypt for at least 10,000 years. The environment has been a hyper-arid desert since the dawn of our recorded history. To see those watermarks is to realize that the stone was sitting there already finished when the Sahara was a lush green savanna. It was there when the Nile flowed in a different direction. It was there before the first pharaoh ever wore a crown. The timeline we have been taught is a thin veneer, a story we have told ourselves to make sense of a past that is far longer and far more complex than we are comfortable admitting. We find traces of this complexity in the most unlikely places. In the deep mines of the world, where we dig for the minerals that fuel our modern lives, we occasionally stumble upon things that should not be there. Objects embedded in coal seams that took millions of years to form. Spheroids of metal with strange, etched lines around their centers, found in strata that date back to the dawn of complex life. The skeptics call these out-of-place artifacts, a term that serves to dismiss them without explaining them. But if even one of these objects is truly what it appears to be, then our entire understanding of the Earth's history is a lie. It would mean that civilizations have risen and fallen not over thousands of years, but over millions. It would mean that the forbidden knowledge we are searching for is not just a secret of the Bronze Age, but a secret of the planet itself. The Earth is not just a rock. It is a library of cycles. Every layer of sediment is a page, and most of those pages have been torn out or burned. We are reading the footnotes and convinced that we know the whole story. But as we develop better tools, as we peer through the ground with ground-penetrating radar, as we map the seafloor with sonar, as we analyze the chemical signatures in the ice, we are finding the echoes of the founders. We are finding that the first civilizations were not the beginning of the story, but the end of a previous chapter. They were the inheritors of a knowledge that was already old when the sun was young. They knew things about the nature of reality, the power of geometry, and the mechanics of the cosmos that we are only just beginning to rediscover through the lens of quantum physics. The precision we see in the ancient world is not just an aesthetic choice. It is a functional requirement. In the world of high-precision engineering, there is no such thing as close enough. If you are building a device that relies on the resonance of sound or the alignment of light, A fraction of a millimeter is the difference between a working machine and a pile of useless stone. The builders of the old world did not move 1,200-ton blocks of granite because they wanted to show off. They moved them because the mass was necessary for the function. They carved them with laser-like accuracy because the vibration had to be perfect. They were working with a physics that we do not yet fully understand, a physics of the earth, of the stars, and of the human mind as a single integrated system. This is the mystery that haunts the fringes of our science. It is the realization that we are a species with amnesia. We look at the ruins of our ancestors and we see temples because we are a religious culture. We see tombs because we are obsessed with death. But to the people who built them, they may have been something else entirely. They may have been the anchors for a global power grid that utilized the piezoelectric properties of quartz-rich granite. They may have been astronomical observatories that could predict the end of an era with the accuracy of a clock. They may have been the lifeboats of a dying civilization, designed to carry the most essential truths through the dark ages that always follow a cataclysm. As we walk through these sites, we feel a strange, haunting familiarity. The proportions of the rooms, the angles of the walls, the way the light hits the floor, it all resonates with something deep inside our biological coding. We are built from the same geometry that they used to build their monuments. We are governed by the same cycles of time. When we look at the ruins of the first founders, we are not looking at the work of strangers. We are looking at a mirror. We are seeing what we were, and perhaps, if we are not careful, we are seeing what we will become again. The earth is patient. It has all the time in the world to wait for us to remember. It will continue to grind the mountains into dust, to flood the plains, and to bury our greatest achievements under layers of silent sediment. The question is not whether we will find the secrets of the first civilizations. The question is whether we will be wise enough to understand them before the cycle begins again. We must look closer at the textures of the stone. In the high deserts, where the sun bleaches the land into a pale, ghostly white, the ruins of the ancients stand as jagged teeth against the sky. If you look at the surface of the granite where it has been protected from the wind, you can still see the marks of the pitting process. It is a strange, mottled texture that looks almost like the skin of an orange. This is the mark of intense heat. It is the sign of a process that softened the stone, making it pliable almost like clay before it was pressed into shape. There are accounts from local traditions that speak of a liquid of the plants that could soften stone, or of golden bowls that could hum a note and make the heavy blocks weightless. We dismiss these stories as folklore, but the physical evidence suggests a reality that is just as strange. We see stones that have been melted around the corners of other stones, creating a seamless, three-dimensional puzzle that no modern mason would even attempt. We see blocks that have been fused together at the molecular level. This is not the work of hammers and chisels. This is the work of a culture that had mastered the transformation of matter. The stakes of this investigation are not merely academic. If we are right, if there was a global, high-technology civilization that was destroyed by a planetary cataclysm, then we are living in a precarious window of stability. We are building our world on the assumption that the Earth is a static, predictable place. We build our cities on the coastlines. We rely on a delicate web of satellite communication, and we assume that the climate will remain within the narrow band that has allowed us to thrive. But the stones tell us that the normal state of the Earth is one of violent change. They tell us that the forbidden knowledge we are uncovering is not just a curiosity of the past, but a blueprint for survival. The first founders did not just leave us monuments. They left us a warning. They left us the math. They left us the dates. They left us the knowledge of the great year and the warnings of the fire that returns when the stars reach a certain position in the sky. The skepticism that meets these ideas is a necessary part of the process. Science requires evidence, and the evidence of a lost world is by its very nature, fragmented and broken. It is easy to find a single anomaly and explain it away as a fluke. It is easy to look at a strange stone and say it was carved by a particularly gifted artist. But when you look at the totality of the evidence, the math, the astronomy, the metallurgy, the architecture, and the global traditions, the fluke explanation begins to crumble. The weight of the evidence becomes too great to ignore. We are forced to confront the possibility that our history is not a steady climb from the cave to the stars, but a series of peaks and valleys, and that we are currently standing on a peak that has been reached before. The rebuttals of the orthodox historians often focus on the missing evidence. They ask where the trash of this civilization is. Where are the plastic bottles, the discarded tools, the metal scraps? It is a fair question, but it assumes that a high-technology civilization would look exactly like ours. We are a culture of waste, of disposability, of synthetic materials that last forever but have no soul. Perhaps the first founders were different. Perhaps their technology was based on natural principles, on the resonance of stone, the flow of water, and the manipulation of the Earth's own energy fields. Such a technology would leave no trash. It would be clean, integrated, and silent. Its only scraps would be the stones themselves, which are the only things durable enough to survive the deep time. Their trash is the very earth we walk upon, reshaped and reordered in ways we are only now beginning to recognize. The silence of the ruins is not an empty silence. It is a waiting silence. As we sit among the broken pillars and the fallen blocks, we can almost hear the hum of the world they left behind. It is a hum that exists just at the edge of our hearing, a reminder that the knowledge is still there, buried in the geometry and the stone. It is a knowledge of how to live in harmony with the great cycles of the planet. It is a knowledge of how to build things that last for eternity. It is a knowledge that we were never meant to discover because it requires a level of responsibility that we have not yet demonstrated. To possess the power of the founders is to possess the power to shape the world itself, and we are still a species that fights over borders and shadows. The deep time integration of our history requires us to look at the Earth as a living participant in this story. The ground is not a passive stage. It is a dynamic force that erases and creates with equal indifference. The subduction of the plates, the erosion of the rains, and the rising of the tides are the tools the Earth uses to keep its secrets. We are trying to read a letter that has been soaked in water and buried in the garden for a decade. Most of the ink is gone, but the impressions of the pen are still there in the paper if you hold it up to the light in just the right way. That is what we are doing when we study these ancient sites. We are looking for the impressions. We are looking for the ghost of the hand that held the pen. The tactile experience of these sites is what stays with you. The way the granite feels warm under the sun, even in the dead of winter. The way the air seems to vibrate in the narrow passageways. The way the shadows fall across the precisely cut edges at the moment of the sunset, revealing a hidden alignment that you didn't see 5 minutes before. This is not the stuff of textbooks. This is a sensory connection to a past that is so deep it feels like part of our DNA. We are the children of the founders, even if we have forgotten our parents' names. We are the survivors of the fire and the flood, carry in the seeds of their knowledge in our myths and our geometry, waiting for the right moment to make them grow again. As we move deeper into the investigation, we find that the forbidden knowledge is not a single secret, but a way of seeing. It is the realization that the world is not a collection of separate objects, but a single resonant system. The stars, the earth, the stone, and the human mind are all parts of the same machine. The first founders knew how to play that machine like an instrument. They knew how to tune the stone to the earth and the earth to the stars. They knew that everything is in motion, even the things that look still. They knew that the great year is the heartbeat of the world, and that we must learn to pulse with it if we want to survive. The investigation of the first civilizations is a journey into the heart of the mystery of what it means to be human. Are we just a clever animal that learned to use tools? Or are we something more? Are we a species with a destiny that stretches across the eons? Or are we just a temporary spark in the darkness? The stones do not give us a direct answer, but they give us a hint. They tell us that we are capable of greatness. They tell us that we can build for eternity. They tell us that we can understand the deepest secrets of the cosmos if we are willing to look beyond the narrow confines of our own era. The forbidden knowledge is not forbidden because someone is hiding it from us. It is forbidden because it is so vast that it threatens to dissolve the small, comfortable world we have built for ourselves. It is a knowledge that demands everything from us: our science, our art, our philosophy, and our courage. We continue to dig, to measure, and to wonder. We look at the anomalous engineering of the past and we feel a spark of recognition. We see the patterns in the dust. We hear the echoes in the silence. And we realize that the story of the first civilizations is not a story of death, but a story of endurance. It is a story of a knowledge that cannot be destroyed, only forgotten. And as we stand on the ruins of the old world, we realize that we are not just looking at the past. We are looking at the foundation of our future. The secrets we were never meant to discover are the very things that will save us, if we have the wisdom to listen to the stones before the wind carries them away. The weight of the silence is the most profound thing about these places. It is a silence that has seen empires rise and fall, that has watched the stars shift their positions, and that has waited for someone to come and ask the right questions. We are finally asking those questions. We are finally looking at the textures, the layers, and the atmospheric details of our lost heritage. We are finally realizing that the Earth is not just a place where we live, but a partner in our evolution. A partner that remembers everything we have forgotten. The forgotten Earth is not a place of the past. It is the ground beneath our feet, right now, holding the secrets of who we were and who we are yet to be. The investigation continues, section by section, layer by layer. We look at the next paradox, the mystery of the lost metallurgy. In the deep strata of the Earth, in layers of clay that should only contain the bones of ancient animals, we find tiny metallic coils. These coils, known as nanospirals, are made of copper, tungsten, and molybdenum. They are so small that they can only be seen with an electron microscope. They are manufactured with a precision that suggests a level of nanotechnology that we are only just beginning to master. Yet, they are found in layers that are hundreds of thousands of years old. The skepticism of the mainstream is that these are industrial waste from modern mining operations that somehow work their way down into the deep earth. But the chemical composition of the spirals does not match any modern alloy, and the depth at which they are found makes the leakage explanation physically impossible. This is the rebuttable evidence that we are not the first. There was someone else here hundreds of thousands of years ago, working at the molecular level. They were not just moving big stones. They were manipulating the very fabric of matter. They were building machines that were so small they could be inhaled. What were these coils for? Were they parts of a global communication network? Were they sensors for a planetary environmental monitoring system? Or were they something even more strange? A form of smart dust that could organize matter and energy at the command of a mind? The nanospirals are the smoking gun of a deep-time civilization that makes our current technological age look like a kindergarten experiment. The paradox of the nanospirals is mirrored in the paradox of the great earthworks. In the plains of North America, in the jungles of Southeast Asia, and in the deserts of the Middle East, we find massive geometric patterns that are only visible from the air. These are not just mounds or ditches. These are complex mathematical diagrams, some of them miles across, that encode the dimensions of the Earth and the distances to the planets. To build them required a level of surveying and aerial perspective that we are told did not exist until the 20th century. Yet, there they are, carved into the skin of the world, weathering away under the slow grinding of the elements. The skeptics say they are ritual paths for people who believed in sky gods. But why build a ritual path that is so large you can't see the pattern while you're walking on it? Why encode the circumference of the Earth in a mound of dirt? The rebuttal is found in the function. These earthworks were not just symbols. They were markers. They were part of a global positioning system that used the Earth itself as the map. They were the anchors for a world that was interconnected, a world where the founders could navigate the entire globe with the same ease that we navigate a city street. They were the evidence of a culture that did not see the world as a collection of islands, but as a single, unified organism. They were the mapmakers of the deep past, and we are just now learning how to read their work. The air is cooling now, and the shadows are stretching long across the ruins. The investigation is reaching its climax. We have looked at the stone, the stars, the math, and the metal. We have seen the evidence of a world that was built on a foundation of anomalous engineering and deep-time knowledge. We have seen the power of the Earth to erase its past and the endurance of the messages that were left behind. Now, we must ask the final question: why did they leave? Why did a civilization that could move mountains and manipulate atoms disappear so completely that we are left to argue over their very existence? The answer is found in the unifying theory of the reset. The first founders were not destroyed by an enemy. They were not wiped out by a plague. They were destroyed by the very thing they understood better than anything else: the cycle. They knew that the Earth is a clock, and that the clock eventually strikes midnight. They knew that the stability of the world is an illusion, a brief moment of calm between the storms of the cosmos. They knew that the fire would return, that the ice would melt, and that the crust would shift. And they knew that no matter how much they built, no matter how much they knew, they could not stop the machine. The unifying theory is that the first founders did not disappear. They prepared. They built the monuments as time capsules. They encoded the knowledge in the myths and the geometry. They buried the nanospirals and the precision stones. And then they stepped back into the shadows. They became the gods of our legends, the teachers who appeared after the flood to give us the seeds of agriculture and the laws of civilization. They are not gone. They are the foundation upon which we are currently building. We are the survivors of their world, and we are currently living through the summer of the cycle. But the autumn is coming. The stars are moving into their positions. The Earth is beginning to breathe and shift its weight once more. The modern relevance of this story is not about the past. It is about the present. We are currently repeating the mistakes of the founders, but without their wisdom. We are building a high-technology civilization that is fragile, disconnected from the Earth, and blind to the cycles of time. We imagine that we are the masters of the world, but we are only the most recent tenants. If the reset were to happen tomorrow, our world would disappear even more completely than theirs did. Our knowledge is stored in digital clouds that would evaporate the moment the power goes out. Our monuments are made of steel and glass that would rust and shatter within a century. We would leave nothing behind but a thin layer of plastic and a chemical shadow in the clay. The philosophical outro of The Forgotten Earth is a call to humility. We must stop looking at the ancient world as a place of primitive people and start looking at it as a school. We must learn to read the stone. We must learn to listen to the silence. We must learn to respect the deep time and the power of the earth to forget. The forbidden knowledge is not a secret to be hoarded. It is a truth to be lived. It is the truth that we are part of a story that is much larger than ourselves. A story that has no beginning and no end. A story of a species that keeps waking up in a house it doesn't remember building and keeps trying to find the keys to the rooms that are locked. As you walk away from the ruins, as the sun dips below the horizon and the first stars begin to appear in the bruised indigo sky, take a moment to feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the weight of the stone. Feel the vibration of the world. Remember that you are standing on the ruins of 1,000 civilizations, and that the dust you breathe was once the walls of a city you have never heard of. You are a part of the forgotten earth, and the secrets are all around you, waiting for you to notice them. Stay curious, stay humble, and never stop looking for the echoes of the founders in the silence of the deep time. The story is not over. It is only waiting for the next chapter to be written. The wind continues to blow across the Altiplano, carrying the dust of the first founders. The stones continue to wait, the stars continue to turn, and the forbidden earth continues to hold its secrets, safe from those who are not yet ready to understand them. But for those who are willing to listen, the message is clear. We have been here before, we will be here again, and the only thing that truly lasts is the knowledge of how to endure the cycle. If you have found value in this journey through the deep time, consider joining us as we continue to uncover the secrets of our world. There are many more layers to peel back, many more paradoxes to explore, and many more stones that have stories to tell. The mystery is vast, and the time is short. Let us look together into the shadows of the past and see what we can find before the sun rises on the next era of the forgotten earth. The great silence does not only reside in the thin air of the mountains or the dry heat of the Egyptian sands. To find the most haunting echoes of the first founders, we must look where the light of the sun has not touched for 10,000 years. We must look to the continental shelves, those vast, drowned plains that encircle our continents like a mourning shroud. Today, these areas are the dark, silt-covered graveyards of the ocean, home to blind creatures and the crushing weight of the abyss. But before the great melting, before the ice caps collapsed and the pulses of meltwater drove the sea levels upward by hundreds of feet, these were the garden lands of the world. These were the fertile river valleys, the sheltered bays, and the teeming coasts where any advanced civilization would have naturally built its heart. When we peer through the murky green of the deep water using sonar and remote-operated cameras, we see shadows that do not belong to the natural geology of the seafloor. We see massive geometric shapes rising out of the silt. In the waters off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, there is a structure that looks like a giant, terraced ziggurat carved directly into the bedrock. It has flat platforms, perfect right angles, and a set of stairs that lead to nowhere but the dark blue of the deep ocean. The skeptics look at this and see natural jointing, the way stone cracks under pressure. They say that the currents and the grinding of the tides have shaped the rock into the appearance of a building. It is a comforting thought. It allows us to keep our timeline intact. But nature does not create a staircase with a uniform rise and run. Nature does not carve a perfectly circular hole into a vertical face of rock to serve as a socket for a pillar. Nature does not create a trench that turns at a 90-degree angle with a precision that mimics a modern drainage system. The paradox of the drowned cities is that they exist in a time frame that our history cannot accommodate. If these structures are man-made, they were built when the area was above sea level, which means they are at least 12,000 years old. At that time, according to the standard narrative, our ancestors were small groups of nomads chasing deer and gathering berries. They were not master stonemasons. They were not urban planners. They were not engineers capable of quarrying and shaping the very foundations of the earth. Yet, the structures remain, slowly being dissolved by the salt and covered by the shifting sands of the deep. They are the silent witnesses to a global catastrophe that wiped the slate of humanity clean. We are looking at the ruins of a world that was already ancient when the water rose. We are looking at the primary evidence of the first founders, and because it sits under 500 feet of water, we find it easier to ignore than to explain. The weight of the water is a physical pressure, but the weight of the mystery is an intellectual one. When you descend into the blue, the sound of the surface fades away, replaced by the rhythmic thumping of your own heart. It is here, in the cold and the dark, that you realize how fragile our records truly are. A city made of wood or mud would have been pulverized by the surf in a matter of months. A city made of steel would have rusted into nothingness in a few centuries. Only the stone survives. Only the hardest granite and the most massive sandstone blocks can withstand the relentless chemistry of the sea. And so we find only the skeletons. We find the massive foundations, the harbor walls that now sit miles from any shore, and the strange geometric patterns that span the floors of the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. The rebuttal to the natural formation argument is found in the orientation of these sites. Many of these submerged structures are aligned with the same astronomical precision as their counterparts on land. They point to stars that served as the guiding lights for the ancient world, stars like Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades. To align a structure to a star while underwater is impossible. It must have been done when the land was dry, when the sky was visible, and when the people living there had a reason to track the movements of the heavens. They were not just building shelters. They were building a map of the cosmos on the surface of the earth. They were tying the movements of the tides to the movements of the stars, creating a unified system of knowledge that we are only now beginning to piece back together. We must consider the texture of the deep earth itself. Beneath the layers of silt and the coral reefs, the earth is a vibrating, crystalline lattice. The first founders seem to understand this in a way that is entirely foreign to our modern materialist science. They did not just place their monuments at random. They placed them at the nodes of a global grid, at the intersections of natural energy lines that pulse with the magnetic heart of the planet. If you map the locations of the most significant ancient sites, the pyramids of Giza, the ruins of Tiwanaku, the temples of Angkor Wat, and the drowned ziggurats of the Pacific, you find that they are connected by a precise geometry. They are separated by distances that are mathematical multiples of each other. They form a pattern that covers the entire globe, a web of stone that seems designed to stabilize or utilize the very energy of the Earth's rotation. The skepticism of the modern geographer is that this is simply pattern seeking, that if you have enough points on a map, you can draw lines to connect anything. It is a valid criticism until you look at the math. The probability of these sites being aligned to within a fraction of a degree by pure chance is billions to one. It is like throwing a handful of sand into the air and having it land in the shape of a perfect clock. The alignments are not just approximate, they are absolute. They account for the curvature of the Earth, the slight bulge at the equator, and the shifting of the poles. This is not the work of people who thought the world was flat. This is the work of a civilization that had mapped the entire planet from pole to pole, and that saw the Earth as a single integrated machine. The paradoxical nature of this planetary grid is that it requires a view from above. To create such a pattern, you need to see the world as a sphere. You need to understand the relationship between longitude and latitude long before the invention of the chronometer. You need a language of mathematics that can describe the spherical geometry of a planet. This is the forbidden knowledge that haunts every ruin. It is the realization that the first founders were not looking at the ground. They were looking at the globe. They were the masters of an aerial perspective that we are told they could not possibly have possessed. Whether they used sophisticated surveying tools, astronomical observations, or a form of technology that left no trace, the result is the same. They knew the shape of the world, and they wrote that knowledge into the very foundations of their cities. Imagine the atmosphere of that lost world. The air would have been different, perhaps more oxygenated, perhaps more charged with the electrical energy of a planet that was not yet choked by the industrial waste of a later age. The first founders would have lived in a world where the connection between the human mind and the natural environment was seamless. They did not see themselves as separate from the Earth, but as part of its metabolism. Their anomalous engineering was not a violation of nature, but a conversation with it. They were not fighting the elements. They were harmonizing with them. They used the weight of the stone to anchor the energy of the ground. They used the flow of the water to generate the power of the mind. They were the architects of a resonance that we can still feel today when we stand in the center of their ruins and let the silence wash over us. The stakes of understanding this resonance are immense. If the first founders had a technology based on vibration and harmony, then our current technology is a crude, violent alternative. We burn the ancient remains of long-dead plants to move our machines. We split the very atoms of the world to generate heat. We are a civilization of friction and explosion. The founders, by contrast, seem to have been a civilization of resonance and flow. Their buildings do not have the scars of high-heat manufacturing or the pollution of a chemical industry. Instead, they have the polished perfection of a world that was shaped by sound and frequency. To rediscover this knowledge is not just to learn about the past. It is to find a way out of the ecological and spiritual dead end that we have built for ourselves. The rebuttal to this idea is often that if they were so advanced, why did they die? Why couldn't they stop the flood? But this assumes that advanced means invulnerable. Even a civilization that can move mountains cannot stop the tilting of a planet's axis. Even a people who can speak to the stars cannot stop the sun from unleashing a coronal mass ejection that strips away the atmosphere. The founders were not gods. They were humans who understood the rules of the game better than we do. And the most important rule of the Earth is that it eventually cleans its own house. They knew the reset was coming. They knew that the great year was coming to a close, and so their goal was not to survive as a political empire, but to survive as a legacy. They built for the survivors. They built for the amnesiacs who would follow them. The texture of the stone in the deep chambers of the Great Pyramid of Giza is a perfect example of this legacy. These blocks are not just stone. They are high quartz granite, a material that is piezoelectric. When pressure is applied to quartz, it generates an electrical charge. The pyramid, with its millions of tons of weight pressing down on these granite chambers, is a massive solid-state generator. The skeptics say it is a tomb, yet no body was ever found there. There are no inscriptions on the walls, no funeral art, no treasures of a dead king. Instead, there are empty granite boxes that are polished to a mirror finish and tuned to the frequency of the Earth's own heartbeat. This is not a place for the dead. It is a place for the living to connect with the power of the planet. It is a machine that was built to last for 40,000 years, waiting for someone to come along who remembers how to turn it on. The investigation of these machines leads us to the concept of genetic memory. There is a strange phenomenon that occurs when modern humans visit these ancient sites. People often report feelings of intense déjà vu, of a deep, unexplainable grief, or of a sudden, overwhelming clarity. The skeptics dismiss this as atmospheric suggestion, the result of being in a grand, impressive place. But what if it is something more? What if the forbidden knowledge is not just written in the stone, but written in us? What if the trauma of the great cataclysm, the memory of the fire and the flood, is etched into our very DNA? We are the descendants of the survivors. We carry the echoes of that lost world in our subconscious. When we stand in the presence of the founder's work, something in us recognizes the geometry. Something in us remembers the frequency. We are like children who have been separated from their parents, finding a photograph of a home we don't remember ever living in. The paradox of our modern age is that we are more connected than ever, yet more isolated from our own history. We have a vast library of information at our fingertips, but we have lost the ability to read the language of the earth. We look at a mountain and see resources. The founders looked at a mountain and saw a living entity with its own resonance. We look at the stars and see distant, cold balls of gas. They looked at the stars and saw the clock of the cosmos, the keepers of the great cycles. To bridge this gap, we must be willing to let go of our pride. We must be willing to admit that the primitive people of the past were, in many ways, far more sophisticated than we are. They were not lacking in intelligence. They were just working with a different set of tools of the mind, of the spirit, and of the fundamental forces of the universe. The skepticism that greets these ideas is a form of protection. If we admit that a great civilization existed and was destroyed, then we have to admit that we could be next. It is much safer to believe that we are the pinnacle of progress, and that the past was nothing but a long, dark tunnel of ignorance. But the stone is a patient teacher. It waits in the deserts, it waits under the ice, and it waits at the bottom of the sea. It waits for the moment when our own systems begin to fail, when our technology proves insufficient, and when we are forced to look back to find the way forward. The forbidden knowledge is the insurance policy of the human race. It is the wisdom that remains when everything else is stripped away. We must look at the so what of this entire story. Why does it matter that a civilization existed 12,000 years ago? It matters because it changes our understanding of our own potential. If we are not the first, then we are not alone in time. We are part of a long, glorious, and tragic lineage. We are the inheritors of a world that has been shaped by hands we will never hold, and by minds that saw the universe with a clarity we can only imagine. To understand the first founders is to understand ourselves. It is to recognize that we are capable of building things that defy time. It is to recognize that we have a responsibility to the future that is just as great as our debt to the past. The climate of our planet is shifting again. The ice is melting, the seas are rising, and the earth is breathing in a way that suggests a new cycle is beginning. We are entering a period of instability that mimics the one that destroyed the first founders. This is not a coincidence. This is the rhythm of the world. And as we face this uncertain future, the forbidden knowledge becomes more relevant than ever. We need to remember how they moved the stones. We need to remember how they tuned the rooms. We need to remember how they lived in harmony with the Great Reset. We need to find the lifeboats they left for us in the geometry and the stone. The atmosphere of the investigation is one of quiet urgency. We are running out of time to read the message. The erosion is accelerating. The rising waters are covering the evidence. The forbidden earth is closing its gates once more, but the story is still there for those who are brave enough to look. It is written in the silence of the Altiplano, in the shadows of the Giza Plateau, and in the dark, cold depths of the continental shelves. It is a story of a world that was, a world that could be, and a world that will eventually return. The secrets we were never meant to discover are the only things that will allow us to see the sun rise on the other side of the great silence. The rhythmic pacing of our journey continues. We move from the physical ruins to the atmospheric ghosts of the past. Imagine the smell of the damp earth in a newly excavated chamber, a scent that hasn't been disturbed for 5,000 years. It is the smell of a time when the world was younger, but the wisdom was older. Every grain of dust we brush away is a piece of a puzzle that spans the entire globe. We are not just archaeologists. We are detectives in a cold case that has lasted for millennia. And the primary suspect is time itself, the great eraser, the silent thief of memory. But even time leaves fingerprints. It leaves them in the way the sediment layers are compressed after a sudden, violent flood. It leaves them in the way the magnetism of the rocks is frozen in a moment of polar reversal. These are the textural details that tell the true story. When we analyze the ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica, we see the signatures of a world on fire. We see the layers of ash and the spikes in platinum that mark the impact of a comet swarm 12,800 years ago. This was the trigger. This was the fire that fell from the sky, melting the ice and sending a wall of water across the continents. This was the moment the first civilizations were broken. Their cities turned into rubble and their knowledge scattered to the four winds. The paradox is that we find the evidence of this fire in the very same places we find the most advanced stonework. In the ruins of the Fertile Crescent, in the mountain fortresses of the Andes, and in the temples of the Nile, we find stones that have been vitrified, turned into glass by a heat so intense it could only come from a cosmic source or a technology we do not possess. We see entire walls where the blocks have been fused together, the surfaces bubbling and melting like wax. The skeptics say these were ritual fires or lighting strikes, but a ritual fire cannot melt a 20-ton block of granite, and a lightning strike does not hit an entire city with a uniform intensity. This is the evidence of a catastrophe that was global, sudden, and absolute. The rebuttal to the accidental nature of our history is found in the way the survivors responded. They did not just give up and die. They regrouped. They moved to the high ground. They began to rebuild, but with a different focus. They were no longer building for the heights of an empire. They were building for the preservation of the soul. This is why the later ruins, the ones built in the shadow of the great cataclysm, have a different feeling. They are more defensive, more hidden, more obsessed with the preservation of the old laws. They were a people who had seen the end of the world, and they were determined that the next time it happened, we would be better prepared. The investigation of the forgotten earth is a journey into the dark heart of our own amnesia. We are like a man who has woken up in a hospital with no memory of his name, his family, or his home. He sees the scars on his body and he wonders how they got there. He sees a ring on his finger and he wonders who gave it to him. We are that man. The ruins are our scars. The anomalous engineering is our ring. And the forbidden knowledge is the memory that is slowly, painfully starting to return. We are beginning to remember that we were once great. We are beginning to remember that we once knew the secrets of the stone and the stars. And most importantly, we are beginning to remember that we have a home to return to, if only we can find the way back through the silence. The atmosphere of the story shifts now toward the philosophical and the profound. We have looked at the facts, we have confronted the paradoxes, and we have navigated the rebuttals. Now we must sit with the so what. What does it mean for us today in our world of screens and satellites? It means that we are not at the end of history. We are in the middle of a chapter, and the pages are starting to turn faster. The Earth is giving us signs, the shifting weather, the erratic behavior of the magnetic field, the sense of a growing tension in the very air we breathe. These are the same signs the founders saw. These are the warnings that the cycle is closing. The modern relevance of the forbidden knowledge is its power to ground us. In a world that is increasingly artificial, the stone is real. In a world that is increasingly obsessed with the now, the deep time is eternal. By connecting with the first civilizations, we are connecting with something that cannot be deleted or hacked. We are connecting with the fundamental reality of our planet. This is the call to action of our journey. It is not a call to dig up more ruins or to find more gold. It is a call to change our perspective. It is a call to look at the world with the eyes of the founders, to see the geometry, to hear the resonance, and to respect the power of the earth to both give and take away. The textures of the world are calling to us. The cold stone, the damp earth, the weight of the water, and the silence of the stars. They are all parts of the same message. They are all telling us that we are part of something vast, something mysterious, and something beautiful beyond our wildest imaginations. The first founders knew this. They lived it. They built it into their walls, and they whispered it into their myths. And now, as we stand on the edge of a new era, it is our turn to listen. It is our turn to be the keepers of the forgotten earth. We look at the layers of the planet, from the core to the crust, and we see a history of resilience. Life has survived the freezing of the oceans and the boiling of the atmosphere. Humanity has survived the fire from the sky and the water from the deep. We are a species of survivors, and our greatest strength is our ability to remember, even when the earth tries its best to make us forget. The forbidden knowledge is the thread that connects us through the ages, the light that stays lit in the darkest nights of our history. It is the secret of who we are, and it is the key to where we are going. As we conclude this part of the journey, let the weight of the mystery sit with you. Don't rush to find answers. Just stay with the questions. Feel the vibration of the silence. Watch the way the shadows fall across the ground. And remember that the earth you walk upon is not just soil and rock. It is the archive of a million stories, most of them untold, all of them waiting for the right moment to be heard. The investigation is never truly over. It is a lifelong commitment to the truth, a steady climb toward the heights of a wisdom that was once common knowledge. The sun is setting now, casting a long golden light across the landscape. The ruins look different in this light, less like skeletons and more like sleepers, waiting for the dawn. The air is still, and the world seems to hold its breath. This is the moment of the great silence, the moment when the past and the present meet, and for a brief second, the veil is thin. In this moment, we can see the first founders. We can see them moving the stones, we can hear them singing the frequencies, and we can feel the power of their world. It is a world that is gone, but never truly lost. It is a world that is forgotten, but never truly erased. It is the forgotten earth, and it is ours to rediscover. The deeper we probe into the veins of the world, the more the earth begins to bleed secrets that it was never supposed to yield. Beyond the massive stones and the drowned cities lies a mystery that exists at the very limit of human vision. In the Ural Mountains, buried in the river silt of a layer that dates back hundreds of thousands of years, miners discovered something that shatters every conventional understanding of human progress. These are the nanospirals, tiny, delicate coils of metal, some as small as a fraction of a millimeter. They are made of tungsten and molybdenum, metals that require temperatures of over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit to forge. They are not mere lumps of ore. They are manufactured components, spiraling with a mathematical regularity that suggests a purpose we can barely conceive. To look at them under a microscope is to realize that the first founders were not just masters of the massive. They were masters of the invisible. The paradox of these microscopic artifacts is that they appear in a geological stratum where only the simplest life forms should exist. According to our linear view of time, there was nothing on this planet at that depth but the slow, silent accumulation of clay and the shells of long-dead mollusks. There were no furnaces, no laboratories, and no machines capable of refining rare earth metals. Yet, there they sit, tucked into the ancient sediment like a forgotten signature. The skepticism of the scientific establishment is predictable. They argue that these spirals are the technogenic debris of modern rocket launches from nearby cosmodromes, dust that has somehow filtered through the solid rock to settle in the ancient layers. It is a neat explanation, but it falls apart when one examines the chemical purity of the alloys. These spirals do not contain the impurities found in modern industrial manufacturing. They are cleaner, more precise, and more durable than anything produced in our current age. The rebuttal is found in the depth itself. For a microscopic particle to travel through hundreds of feet of compacted earth and rock to reach a layer 100,000 years old is a physical impossibility. The Earth is not a sieve. It is a pressurized vault. These objects were laid down at the same time as the sediment that surrounds them. This means that a civilization with the capacity for advanced metallurgy and perhaps even nanotechnology was active on this planet long before the first mammal began to walk upright. We are looking at a history that does not just predate the Bronze Age, but predates the very concept of humanity as we know it. We are looking at a world where the manipulation of the molecular was as common as the carving of the stone. The texture of this metallic mystery is cold and unyielding. When you hold the vial containing these spirals, you are holding the remnants of a physics that has been lost to the grinding gears of deep time. It forces us to reconsider the purpose of the Great Grid. Perhaps those massive stone monuments were not the machines themselves, but merely the housing for something much smaller and more powerful. Perhaps the anomalous engineering we see in the pyramids and the temples was designed to interact with a world of microscopic sensors and conductive dust. We are like people looking at the casing of a computer and assuming the box itself is the miracle, never realizing that the true power lies in the microscopic circuits hidden within. This leads us to the most unsettling part of the investigation: the realization that the knowledge was never truly lost, but merely submerged in our own biology. There is a concept known as subconscious architecture. The idea that our modern cities and our modern technologies are actually clumsy attempts to recreate a world we carry in our collective memory. We build skyscrapers that mimic the proportions of ancient obelisks. We create satellite networks that mirror the geometry of the planetary grid. We are haunted by a blueprint that we cannot see, but that we follow with a mindless biological urge. The first founders did not just leave their secrets in the ground. They left them in the marrow of our bones. Consider the sensation of standing in a place of deep antiquity. It is not just the sight of the ruins that affects us. It is the atmospheric pressure of the site itself. There is a weight in the air, a specific vibration that triggers a response in the human nervous system. This is the genetic memory of the reset. We are a species that has been through the fire and the flood more times than we can count, and the ruins are the markers of our past lives. When we see the precision of the stone, we are not just looking at a wall. We are looking at a mirror of our own lost potential. The skepticism that calls this romanticism or pseudoscience fails to account for the physical reality of the human response. We react to these sites with an intensity that we do not feel for modern structures, no matter how grand they may be. There is an ancestral recognition that takes place, a moment where the amnesia slips and we remember that we were once the architects of the earth. The investigation now turns toward the great earthworks, those massive geometric patterns that stretch across the plains of the world. In the Ohio Valley, in the deserts of Peru, and in the steppes of Kazakhstan, the ground is carved with symbols so large they can only be understood from the sky. These are not burial mounds or defensive ditches. They are mathematical constants, astronomical alignments, and perhaps even biological diagrams. To build them, the founders had to move millions of cubic yards of soil with a precision that accounts for the curvature of the earth. The paradox is that the people who lived near these structures had no way to see them. They lived their entire lives on the ground, never knowing that they were walking over a giant representation of the solar system or a map of the distant stars. The skepticism of the academic world is that these were processional paths for religious pilgrims. But why build a path that follows the exact movement of a lunar cycle that takes 18 years to complete? Why build a geometric square that is accurate to within an inch over a distance of a mile? The rebuttal is that these were not built for the people on the ground. They were built for the Earth itself. They were a form of Earth acupuncture, a way of marking the energy nodes of the planet to stabilize the climate or to communicate with the deep systems of the world. They were part of a planetary maintenance system that we no longer understand. The founders were not just building for themselves. They were gardening the planet on a geological scale. The air in these places is different. It feels static, as if a great storm has just passed or is about to arrive. When you walk the lines of the Nazca Desert or the embankments of the Serpent Mound, you feel the rhythm of a logic that is entirely non-human. It is a logic of the long term, a logic that thinks in centuries and millennia. This is the forbidden knowledge of time. We are a culture of the now, obsessed with the next minute, the next hour, the next day. The founders were a culture of the ever, obsessed with the movement of the poles and the precession of the equinoxes. They knew that the earth is a slow-moving beast, and they learned to speak its language. The climax of our journey brings us to the unifying theory of the reset. This is the secret that we were never meant to discover, because to know it is to lose the comfort of our perceived stability. The theory is this: the earth is not a passive home. It is a self-regulating organism that periodically purges its surface to maintain its internal balance. Every 12,000 years, the solar system passes through a region of space that triggers a massive shift in the Earth's magnetic field. This shift causes the crust to slip, the oceans to wash over the continents, and the climate to flip in a matter of days. This is the heartbeat of the world. The first civilizations were not destroyed by accident. They were destroyed by the clock. The first founders knew the timing of the clock. They built their monuments as clocks of stone to warn us of the return of the fire and the flood. They used the anomalous engineering to create structures that could survive the crushing weight of the ice and the scouring force of the water. They were not trying to save their cities. They were trying to save the idea of humanity. They left the math in the stone, the geometry in the ground, and the memory in our blood. They knew that we would forget, and they knew that the earth would erase their work. But they also knew that one day we would develop the tools to look at the world from the sky and the microscopic level, and we would begin to see the pattern. The so what of this revelation is the most terrifying part of the mystery. If the clock is real, and if the cycle is 12,000 years, then we are currently living in the final seconds of the hour. The last reset happened roughly 12,800 years ago. We are overdue for the next breathing of the earth. Our modern civilization, with all its arrogance and its fragile technology, is standing on the tracks, and the train is coming. The forbidden knowledge is not a treasure map. It is an evacuation plan. It is the realization that we must stop fighting each other over the scraps of the surface and start looking at how to survive the shift. The modern relevance of the founders' work is found in our growing understanding of the Earth's magnetic field and its weakening state. We see the poles moving at an accelerating rate. We see the magnetosphere thinning, allowing more cosmic radiation to reach the surface. We see the weather patterns becoming erratic and the seismic activity increasing. These are the symptoms that the founders recorded in their stone clocks. They are the atmospheric details of a world that is preparing to shift its weight. The skepticism of the modern age tells us that we can fix the climate or control the planet. But the stones tell us that we are merely passengers on a very large and very restless ship. The philosophical outro of our story is a meditation on the nature of endurance. What does it mean to be a survivor? It means to carry the seed of the past into the future. It means to build things that are not for us, but for those who will come after the darkness. The first founders were the ultimate survivors. They faced the end of their world with a dignity that is written into every block of the pyramids and every line of the earthworks. They didn't leave behind their names or their wars. They left behind their wisdom. They left behind a love for the truth that is stronger than the power of the earth to erase. As we conclude this deep dive into the forgotten earth, we must look at the tactile reality of our own lives. Touch the ground beneath you. Feel the texture of the soil, the weight of the air, and the silent vibration of the deep stone. You are a part of this cycle. You are a link in a chain that stretches back into the lightless depths of the past and forward into the unknown fire of the future. The forbidden knowledge is yours now. It is a weight, but it is also a light. It is the realization that you are more than you have been told, and that the world is older than you can imagine. Stay alert to the signs. Watch the stars as they move through the houses of the zodiac. Listen to the resonance of the high places. Pay attention to the microscopic patterns in the dust. The founders are still speaking to us through the silence and the stone. They are telling us that the story is not over, and that the reset is not the end, but a beginning. We have been here before, and we will be here again. The earth will forget us, but the knowledge will remain, waiting in the silence for the next generation of seekers to find it. The final call to action is a subtle one. It is not a request for followers or likes. It is a request for awareness. Go out into the world and look at it with the eyes of the founders. Look for the geometry in the trees, the math in the waves, and the resonance in the silence. Be the one who remembers. Be the one who carries the flame through the coming night. The forgotten earth is only forgotten because we have chosen to close our eyes. Open them. See the world for what it is, a beautiful, dangerous, and eternal machine of cycles. And remember that you were never meant to discover these secrets, because once you do, you can never go back to the comfortable sleep of the amnesiac. You are awake now, and the clock is ticking. The texture of the final pages is one of worn parchment and cold granite. The smell is of ozone and ancient dust. The atmospheric flow of the story has brought us from the high mountains to the deep sea, from the massive stone to the microscopic coil, and from the past to the very edge of the future. We have seen the stakes, we have felt the paradoxes, and we have heard the rebuttals. Now there is only the silence. The same silence that greeted the first founders when they finished their work. It is a silence that is full of potential, a silence that holds the breath of the planet. Listen to it. In that silence, you can hear the heartbeat of the earth. You can hear the shifting of the plates and the turning of the stars. You can hear the voices of those who came before, whispering the secrets of the stone. They are not gone. They are just waiting for the cycle to turn. And as the sun sets on our current era, and the long shadows of the deep time stretch out to meet us, we can take comfort in the knowledge that we are part of a tradition that is as old as the world itself. We are the founders of the future, and the earth is our witness. The story of the forgotten earth is your story. It is the story of a species that refuses to stay in the mud. It is the story of a mind that insists on measuring the stars. It is the story of a heart that carries the memory of a home that was lost 12,000 years ago. We are the children of the first civilizations, and we are finally coming home. The forbidden knowledge is the key to the door, and the door is starting to open. Step through it. The world is waiting. The atmospheric pacing of the narrative slows to a steady, rhythmic pulse. The sensory details of the damp earth and the cold stone fade into a sense of vast, open space. We are no longer looking at the ruins. We are looking at the horizon. We are looking at the place where the earth meets the sky, where the past meets the future, and where the silence meets the song. This is the place where the first founders lived, and it is the place where we will find our destiny. The forgotten earth is not a place of the past. It is the world as it truly is, beneath the veneer of our modern distractions. It is the eternal reality of the cycle, and it is the most beautiful mystery of all. To understand the horizon, we must first go back beneath it. We must follow the roots of the stone down into the black, airless depths of the crust, where the heat of the planet's heart begins to press against the silence. Beneath the hills of Anatolia and the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, there exists a world that has never seen the sun, a world of tunnels and vaults that stretch for hundreds of miles. These are not caves. They are not the irregular, dripping hollows carved by the slow erosion of groundwater. They are geometric. They are smooth. They are the work of a hand that did not fear the dark. In the deep earth, we find the second great fact of the first founders. They did not only live upon the world, they lived within it. Imagine standing at the mouth of a shaft that drops perfectly vertical for 800 feet. The walls are not rough-hewn. They have the sheen of polished obsidian, a glass-like finish that suggests the rock was not dug, but melted. There are no tool marks, no scars of the pickaxe or the drill. Instead, there is only the unbroken continuity of the stone, fused into a seamless passage. As you descend, the air grows cool and heavy with the scent of wet mineral and ancient, unmoving oxygen. This is the subterranean network of the founders, a labyrinth designed to serve as a refuge when the sky turned to fire and the atmosphere became a furnace. These cities, like the one we call Derinquiu, are multi-leveled masterpieces of ventilation and logistics, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of souls for generations. The paradox of these underworlds is found in the light. When you explore the deepest reaches of these complexes, miles beneath the surface, you notice something unsettling. There is no soot. There are no black stains from torches on the ceilings. There are no niches for oil lamps. In a world of total darkness, the builders moved and worked with a precision that requires perfect visibility. The skepticism of the modern archaeologist suggests that they used mirrors to reflect sunlight from the surface, bouncing the beams down through the levels. But a mirror made of polished bronze or copper loses the majority of its luminosity after only a few reflections. To light a chamber 10 levels down would require a physics of light that we have only recently rediscovered with fiber optics. The rebuttal, found in the local legends of the Shining Stones, is that they possessed a form of cold, luminescent technology, perhaps a bioluminescent or electromagnetic light source that left no trace and required no fuel. They did not fight the dark. They dissolved it. The texture of the air in these vaults is a message in itself. The ventilation shafts are positioned with such accuracy that even in the deepest chambers, miles from the entrance, a steady, rhythmic pulse of fresh air continues to circulate. It is as if the earth is breathing through these man-made lungs. This is anomalous engineering on a biological scale. It suggests that the founders understood the fluid dynamics of the atmosphere as a single living system. They were not just digging holes, they were integrating their architecture into the metabolism of the planet. They knew that to survive the reset, they had to become a part of the stone, protected from the radiation and the storms by the massive insulating weight of the mountain. As we move through these tunnels, we encounter the mystery of the lost mathematics. Every turn in the passage, every height of a ceiling, and every angle of a staircase is a repetition of the same sacred numbers. We find the number 72, the number 108, and the number 432 etched into the very proportions of the space. These are not random choices. They are the precessional numbers, the mathematical keys to the wobble of the Earth's axis. 1 degree of precessional shift takes 72 years. A full cycle takes 25,920 years. The founders were obsessed with these numbers because they were the countdown on the cosmic clock. They were living in a house where the walls were covered in the equations of their own destruction. The skepticism that greets this mathematical consistency is that numbers can be found anywhere if you look hard enough. It is the argument of the coincidental. But when the same numbers appear in the layout of the temples in Cambodia, the height of the pyramids in Mexico, and the subterranean vaults of Turkey, the coincidence becomes a statistical impossibility. We are looking at a global standardized system of measurement that was based on the dimensions of the planet. The rebuttal is that the founders did not invent these numbers. They discovered them in the structure of the universe itself. They were not just mathematicians. They were listeners. They heard the frequency of the earth and they built their world in harmony with it. We must feel the weight of this realization. It changes the way we look at the ruins. They are not just monuments to dead kings. They are the tuning forks of a lost science. In the high valleys of the Andes, there are stones that have been carved with such complex, three-dimensional geometry that they look like the components of a massive lithic computer. These are the H-blocks of Tiwanaku, stones of gray andesite with internal right angles and grooves that are accurate to within the width of a human hair. When you run your hand over these stones, you are not feeling the work of a primitive culture. You are feeling the work of a machine. You are feeling a level of standardization that implies a global industrial output. These stones were not carved individually. They were manufactured to fit together into a system that has since been shattered by a force so great it tossed blocks weighing 100 tons like pebbles on a beach. The atmospheric detail of this destruction is haunting. In these sites, we find the tidal debris of the cataclysm. Granite blocks that have been snapped like toothpicks, mixed with the skeletons of deep-sea creatures and the pulverized remains of forests. All of it is fused into a single layer of mud and stone. The skepticism of the uniformitarian view is that this happened over millions of years through the slow process of sedimentation. But the rebuttal is found in the frozen nature of the layer. The trees are not rotted. They are splintered. The bones are not fossilized. They are broken. This was not a slow process. This was a single, terrifying afternoon. This was the moment the ocean climbed the mountains and the earth turned to liquid. The investigation now turns to the biological legacy. If the founders were so advanced, if they knew the reset was coming, did they leave more than just stone and math? Did they leave a piece of themselves in us? When we look at the complexity of the human genome, we find sections of DNA that are often dismissed as junk, sequences that do not seem to code for anything we currently understand. But as our own genetic science advances, we are finding that this junk is actually a sophisticated archive of information. It is a biological time capsule. Some researchers have suggested that if you wanted to leave a message that would survive for 100,000 years, you wouldn't write it in stone or metal. You would write it in the code of life itself. You would hide it in the very thing that keeps recreating itself generation after generation. The paradox of the human story is our sudden, explosive appearance in the archaeological record. We went from being hunters with stone tools to being architects of the pyramids in a span of time that is, in geological terms, a single heartbeat. The skepticism says this was the result of a cognitive revolution or a sudden change in climate that forced us to innovate. But the rebuttal is that you do not innovate the ability to move 1,200-ton stones. You do not innovate the knowledge of the Earth's circumference. You inherit it. We are not a species that evolved into civilization. We are a species that is recovering from a catastrophic fall. We are the inheritors of a broken kingdom, trying to make sense of the tools we found in the ruins. The texture of this recovery is slow and painful. We have spent the last 10,000 years relearning the basics. We look at the forbidden knowledge and we call it mystery because we have lost the vocabulary to call it science. We look at the anomalous engineering and we call it magic because we have lost the power to call it technology. But the founders are still there, in the gaps of our history and the silence of our souls. They are the voice that tells us to look at the stars. They are the urge that drives us to build for eternity. They are the ghost in the machine of our civilization, urging us to remember before the clock strikes 12 again. The climate of the world is a rhythmic cycle of expansion and contraction. We are currently in the expansion, the brief, sunlit summer where we are allowed to thrive. But the founders lived through the contraction. They saw the sky darken and the ice return. They felt the air grow thin and the ground begin to shake. And they prepared. They built the vaults, they encoded the DNA, and they tuned the stones. They did everything they could to ensure that the light of intelligence would not go out. And now, as we stand on the edge of the next contraction, their work is becoming visible again. The forgotten Earth is rising to meet us. Consider the crystalline archive of the planet. Quartz is one of the most common minerals in the Earth's crust, and it is also the most perfect storage medium for information. A single crystal can hold vast amounts of data in its atomic lattice, data that remains stable for millions of years. The founders used granite, a rock rich in quartz, for their most important structures. They didn't just build with it, they programmed it. When you stand inside a granite chamber, you are standing inside a massive hard drive. The frequencies they tuned the rooms to were the read and write commands for this lithic memory. The skeptics say this is crystalline mysticism, but our own technology is moving in the same direction. We are developing quartz-based glass discs that can hold 500 terabytes of data for billions of years. We are not inventing something new. We are stumbling upon the same truth that the founders used to preserve their world. The atmosphere of the investigation is now one of profound connection. We are no longer looking at the past as something separate from us. We are looking at a single, continuous thread of existence. The founders were not them. They were us, in a different part of the cycle. They had the same fears, the same loves, and the same drive to understand the universe. They just had a different set of tools and a much longer memory. To discover their secrets is to discover our own forgotten potential. It is to realize that we are capable of more than just consumption and survival. We are capable of being the architects of time. The so what of the subterranean vaults and the genetic archives is a call to change our definition of progress. We measure progress by how much we can extract from the Earth. The founders measured progress by how well they could integrate with the Earth. We build for the next quarter, they built for the next cycle. We are a civilization of the surface, vulnerable to every whim of the sun and the sea. They were a civilization of the deep, anchored in the reality of the planet. If we want to survive the coming shift, we must learn to go deep again. We must learn to speak the language of the stone and the frequency of the heart. The modern relevance of this story is etched into the very air we breathe. The magnetic field of the Earth is currently weakening at an alarming rate, a process that historically precedes a polar reversal. Our modern electronics, our power grids, and our global communication systems are all predicated on a stable magnetic field. If the field collapses, our technology will not just stop working. It will be destroyed. This is the solar reset that the founders warned us about. They knew that when the shield of the planet drops, the sun's energy pours in, triggering the fires and the floods. Their stone machines were designed to work without electricity, without magnets, and without satellites. They were designed to work with the fundamental forces of gravity and vibration, the only things that remain stable when the world turns upside down. The philosophical outro is a vision of the Earth as a living memory. Every mountain, every valley, and every grain of sand is a witness to the story of the founders. We are walking on a library. We are breathing the dust of 1,000 empires. And as we move through our lives, we are adding our own pages to the book. The question is not whether the Earth will remember us. The Earth remembers everything. The question is what we will leave behind for the next generation of seekers. Will we leave behind a world of plastic and poison, or will we leave behind a message of hope, encoded in the stone and the stars? The textures of the world are the tactile reminders of our responsibility. The cold granite, the smooth basalt, the damp earth, and the rhythmic pulse of the air. They are all calling us to wake up. They are all telling us that the time of amnesia is over. We have discovered the secrets we were never meant to discover, and there is no going back. We are the keepers of the forbidden knowledge now. We are the watchers on the wall, looking for the first signs of the return of the fire. Stay in the flow of the mystery. Let the atmosphere of the deep time wash over you. The first founders are not gone. They are waiting in the silence. They are waiting for us to stop fighting and start listening. They are waiting for us to recognize the geometry of our own souls. And as the sun dips below the horizon and the stars come out to count the years, remember that you are not alone in the dark. You are part of the forgotten earth, and your story is just beginning. The sensory details of the story now refocus on the smell of ozone and the feeling of a static charge in the air. This is the atmospheric precursor to the shift. The founders felt it too. They watched the auroras dance in the sky at the equator, and they knew the shield was falling. They saw the animals begin to move toward the high ground, and they knew the water was coming. They didn't panic. They prepared. They walked into their stone machines and they waited for the reset to pass. And when they came out, they found a world that was broken, but a world that was still there. They found a world that was ready for a new beginning. We are that beginning. We are the survivors of the survivors. And as we look at the ruins of our ancestors, we are not just seeing the past. We are seeing a blueprint for our own survival. The forbidden knowledge is the most precious gift we have ever received. It is the gift of a second chance. It is the gift of a future that is not written in the stars, but carved in the stone. Let us use it wisely. Let us be the founders that the future will remember with gratitude. Let us be the ones who didn't just disappear into the dark, but who left a light burning for those who would follow. The silence of the ruins is no longer a silence of death. It is a silence of anticipation. It is the silence of a seed that is about to sprout. The earth is ready. The stars are in position. The clock is striking 12. And as we stand on the edge of the horizon, looking out at the vast, open space of the future, we can feel the pulse of the planet beating in time with our own hearts. We are the forgotten earth, and we are finally awake. The rhythmic pacing of the narrative reaches its final, steady beat. The atmosphere of the deep time is now a part of us, a cold, vibrating clarity that allows us to see the world as it truly is. We are not just temporary tenants. We are the guardians of a legacy that spans the eons. The secrets we were never meant to discover have become the foundation of our new world. And as we move forward into the light of the new era, we carry the wisdom of the founders with us, a silent song that will never be forgotten again. The textures of the stone remain, the math remains, the memory remains, and the forgotten earth, once hidden in the shadows of our own amnesia, is now a radiant, geometric reality. The journey is not over. It is just changing form. The investigation is not finished. It is becoming a way of life. And the mystery, the beautiful, mystery-driven story of our origin, is finally being told by the people who were always meant to hear it. The wind across the Altiplano continues to carry the dust, but now the dust is full of light. The stones are no longer silent. They are singing, and the earth, the beautiful, forgotten earth, is finally at peace with its own history. The cycle continues, but this time we are ready. This time we know the way home. The sun is setting now over the jagged edge of the world, casting a light that is the color of old copper and bruised plums. It is in this hour, the time between the light and the dark, that the true nature of our reality becomes impossible to ignore. We are not the masters of time. We are merely its witnesses. The stones that surround us, the massive, silent blocks that have survived the grinding of the glaciers and the rising of the seas, are not just relics. They are the ticking components of a clock that we are only now learning to read. The forbidden knowledge we have sought across the high plateaus and the deep oceans is not a secret hidden by men. It is a truth guarded by the earth itself, a truth that says we are currently living in the brief, beautiful intermission between the great acts of a planetary drama. The final realization of the investigation is the most profound of all. The first founders were not a different species. They were not from another world. They were us, but they were a version of us that lived with its eyes wide open. They didn't build to show their power. They built to preserve their soul. They knew that the Earth is a restless, breathing entity that periodically sheds its skin to begin anew. They knew that the stability we take for granted is a fragile illusion, a momentary alignment of cosmic forces that can be shattered by a single pulse from the sun or a slight tilt of the planet's axis. Their anomalous engineering was their defiance, a way to say to the deep time that we were here, we understood, and we will return. When you touch the polished surface of a granite wall in the heart of a mountain, you are feeling the temperature of eternity. It is cold, steady, and indifferent to the passing of human empires. But if you hold your hand there long enough, you begin to feel a faint, rhythmic vibration. It is the hum of the planet's magnetic heart, a heart that is currently preparing to shift. The scientists of our age speak of the weakening magnetosphere, the wandering poles, and the strange behavior of the solar winds. They use numbers and graphs to describe a process that the founders described with geometry and stone. We are entering the season of the reset. The air is growing heavy with the same static charge that preceded the Great Flood 12,000 years ago. The animals are sensing the change in the soil, and the deep currents of the ocean are beginning to slow. The texture of our modern world is thin and brittle compared to what came before. We have built our cities on the sand, relying on a technology that will vanish the moment the sky turns to fire. Our records are written on silicon and light, things that the first storm will erase. But the forbidden knowledge is still there, waiting in the shadows of the subterranean vaults and the silent chambers of the pyramids. It tells us that we do not have to be victims of the cycle. We can be its navigators. We can learn to read the signs in the stars and the vibrations in the stone. We can remember that we are a species of survivors, and that our greatest strength is not our machines, but our ability to carry the light of awareness through the long night of the reset. So what of this journey is a transformation of the spirit. To know the secrets of the first civilizations is to lose the fear of the end. It is to realize that there is no end, only transformation. The Earth is a laboratory of infinite rebirth, and we are the eternal students. The ruins are not graves. They are the cocoons of a previous life. As we face the coming shift, we should not look at the horizon with dread, but with a deep, ancient recognition. We have seen this sunset before. We have felt this cold wind on our faces. And we know that on the other side of the darkness, the sun will rise on a world that is fresh, clean, and ready for a new story. The atmospheric flow of the forgotten earth is a song that has no ending. It is the sound of the wind through the columns of the Parthenon, the roar of the surf over the walls of Yonaguni, and the silence of the dust in the mines of the Urals. It is a song about us, about our courage, our curiosity, and our refusal to be forgotten. The forbidden knowledge is the melody of that song. It is the proof that we are more than just a clever animal. We are the architects of the Earth's memory. We are the ones who keep the flame lit when the world goes dark. As you step away from the ruins and return to the noise of the modern world, carry the silence of the stone with you. Let it be a weight that grounds you and a light that guides you. Look at the mountains not as obstacles, but as the archives of your ancestors. Look at the stars not as distant lights, but as the gears of the cosmic clock. And most of all, look at the ground beneath your feet with a new respect. It is the skin of a living giant, a giant that has carried you for eons and will carry you for eons more. The secrets we were never meant to discover are the only things that make us truly human. They are the keys to the house we forgot we owned. The investigation of the forgotten earth is a lifelong commitment to the truth. It is a slow burn, a steady climb, and a deep dive into the heart of the mystery. It is a journey that requires us to be humble in the face of deep time and brave in the face of the unknown. But the rewards are beyond measure. To see the world as it truly is, a radiant, geometric, and cyclical masterpiece, is to finally be home. The first founders are still here, in the resonance of the granite and the code of our DNA, waiting for us to finish the work they started. They are waiting for us to wake up and take our place as the guardians of the planet. The shadows are long now, and the first stars are appearing in the bruised indigo of the sky. The air is still, and the world is holding its breath. This is the moment of clarity. This is the moment when the past and the future meet. In this silence, we can hear the voice of the earth, whispering the secrets of the stone. It is a voice that tells us we are loved, we are remembered, and we are part of something beautiful that will never end. The forgotten earth is no longer forgotten. It is alive in us, and the journey is just beginning. As the light fades and the cycle turns once more, remember that the most important secret of all is not something you find in the ground. It is something you find in yourself. It is the realization that you are the bridge between the worlds. You are the one who remembers. You are the founder of what comes next. Stay with the mystery, listen to the silence, and never forget that the earth is your mother, your grave, and your eternal home. The story continues, and you are the one who is writing the final chapter. If the echoes of the deep past have resonated with you, if you feel the weight of the stone and the pull of the stars, then you are already part of the search. The investigation into the forbidden knowledge of our origins is a task for all of us. It is a collective effort to piece together the shattered mirror of our history and see our true face once more. The evidence is waiting in every corner of the globe, from the highest peaks to the deepest trenches, asking us to be brave enough to look. Let us continue to ask the questions that were never meant to be asked. Let us continue to find the secrets that were never meant to be found. For in the heart of the mystery, we find the truth of who we are. The forgotten earth is waiting for you to find it.